Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 309 of the Drunk Testers podcast. I'm your host, as always. I'm Tyler. And joining me, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Sir Colonel Gables. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Tyler. Man, it is finally here. That last freaking episode for our top 10.
Yes. It's been a long night. We're doing better this year. Remember last year when we did this, we bullshitted for like 3 hours.
Oh God!
And then we did the show, and
Yep.
we didn't get done till after 4 o'clock in the morning my time. We're doing a
That's
lot better
true.
this year. Well, we only bullshitted for a little over an hour, and then started, and we have some breaks in between. But it's only currently 12:30 my time, so a lot more manageable. And I've had a lot less alcohol in that time period. And Justin didn't black out this time, so that's good. I call that a win.
That's true, actually.
So that's a win in my books. But in case you guys forgot or didn't hear the last couple episodes, we're doing our marathon session podcast tonight, where we are recording 3 podcasts in one night. We've already done 2 of them. This is our last one. To go back and check those if you're interested. First episode, we talked about our best and worst of a lot of different categories for 2018. Our last episode we did last week was our starting off our top 10 games of the year list. Last week we covered 10 through 6 and our honorable mentions. And this week we will be going through games 5 through 1. So what we're doing is, because Justin isn't here, but he texted me all his answers, and I haven't looked at them, so I don't know what they are. We're going to do Justin's first, then mine, and then we're going to end up with Gables. So, Gables, are you ready to start up?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, so what? Justin's number 5 game of 2018. Honestly, if you would have asked me before we started all this, what his number 1 would be, this was it for me. Number 5 for him is Smash.
Whoa.
And he put funnest as his answer for that being the case.
Okay.
All right. I wish he was here to elaborate a little bit more, but I guess I'll have to deal with that. So for me, my number 5 game of 2018, Gables, is Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
I knew this was going to be somewhere in here. You enjoyed the hell out of that game.
Yeah, it's a weird game where, I usually, you know how I am, and I'm pretty open about it. Where I don't stick around with games very long. Outside of like Madden, I play a game for a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks at most, and I move on. This game took me 5 weeks to finish.
Especially since like you and the Assassin's Creed games have been kind of hit and miss over the past couple of years, and this is one of the games where it's like it's Assassin's Creed, and you've stuck with it for like over 60-something hours. I'm like, what?
Yeah. You're right. It's been like, the first 5 Assassin's Creed games I really, really liked, really loved. And then since then, I don't know how many there's been since then, but I would say more times than not, I've come away meh or they're bad. And, I look at Origins, like last year, I put 25 hours in Origins. And at a certain point, just like at Far Cry 5, I'm just like, I'm not really having fun. I'm just playing this game to say I beat it. I'm just going with emotions. And so I quit playing it. In this game, it picks up where they take a lot of the same things from Origins. But with Origins, other than like Far Cry, there's a lot of issues with it. Like I thought the Bayek was a terrible character. Egypt didn't translate as well as I'd hoped to a Assassin's Creed world. And I didn't like the leveling system they had. I didn't dislike it. I didn't like the fact they had a level cap on everything. We were on this one, and I spent a good chunk of the time like frustrated with this game. We had a long discussion about it a while back about I hated the fact that, and I still don't like it, the fact that the game levels up with you. Kind of takes out the purpose, I think, of a leveling system.
Oh yeah.
And everything around you levels up with you. And there's not really, to me, I feel like there's a whole lot of a point to it. But I was trying to play this game, an hour here, a couple hours there, and it was just difficult to do. Most games nowadays, it's hard to do that in a couple hour stretches, but especially this game, being a big open world, is really tough to do. And I was on the verge of quitting it, and then, like I said, back then. I spent the $10. I bought the XP boost. I'm not happy I did it. It sucks that I did it, but I don't regret it. Because if it wasn't for me doing that, it kind of gave me like just as an XP boost. It gave me that boost I needed to keep playing the game a little bit more and more. And I talked about it after Extra Life when Justin was in the chat with us. And we were bullshitting during it, and he's like, "Are you enjoying this game, or are you just going through the motions?" And I'm like, I don't really know right now. Like, there's definitely some things I like about it. And then I had a couple days off of work after Extra Life, and I spent pretty much the couple days after that just playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And like I think that was me doing that was the reason I finished the game, played it, and I'm happy for it because this is a game that it works better, it plays better, and it's more enjoyable when you're playing it in long sessions. Like, it sucks that it's the case, but that's the best way to play this game. Is I was playing it in 4 or 5 hour chunks throughout that time, and I mean one of the big things that got me keep playing it was Greece as a world for Assassin's Creed works really well. With it's got a lot of the Black Flag elements with the boats and the battling, which is awesome. I think the world works really well. I think it's a beautiful place to look at. But the biggest thing to me, and probably my favorite character in gaming this year, is Cassandra. I picked her over Alexio, and happy I did it because Alexio, he sounds like your run-of-the-mill muscular guy, and Cassandra, she felt like she's like it's just different. Like, she like had a personality. She felt like a real person. And there was multiple moments with her as playing as her that she like the things she said, her dialogue made me laugh out loud, and just like kind of her like I'm not taking shit from anybody personality. The way that like her kind of comedic reaction to things, like the way she's like someone say something and she just spot off of the mouth at somebody was great. She didn't, she just didn't give a shit. She was a badass and she knew it, and it was great. And maybe it's because I haven't, I played a million games where you're just like this muscular meathead guy, and it doesn't really, without sometimes it's not always the case, but you after playing as many Gears of War as I have, it's eventually kind of it doesn't really mean a whole lot. So playing this, having Cassandra, was awesome. I loved she is a cool character. I hope they do some spin-offs with her because I love to have more Cassandra. I don't know. It's sad to hear that. I think they said like Ubisoft came out with some stats. They said over 70% of people that played Assassin's Creed Odyssey picked Alexios, which is a huge bummer because they're doing themselves some injustice. There's a reason why the woman that played Cassandra, the voice actress, was nominated for a bunch of awards for voice acting, and the guy that played Alexios was not. But I think it's funny because this is, Assassin's Creed Origins was supposed to be the origins of the Brotherhood of Assassins, but this game takes place like 200 years before Assassin's Creed Origins.
Yep.
So it doesn't deal with like, it's, I don't know. There's no like you're an assassin, but you're not really dealing with the Brotherhood, or you're not dealing with the who the people that are against assassins.
The Templars.
Templars. Thank you. So you're not really dealing with the Templars, you're dealing with cultists, which they are the Templars before they are Templars. It's kind of the origins of the Templars, where Assassin's Creed Origins was the origins of the assassins. But I really enjoyed the story where like the whole story with her is she's like separated. She is separated from her whole family, and she grows up as an orphan in this in this weird island, and she doesn't really she just kind of survives on her own. She grows up kind of doesn't live life on her own and survive from a small child to I don't know how old she is now, but I think she's like probably early 20s, I would assume, and it's a story about her trying to find her family. And I really enjoyed when you get to meet the father. The best parts, I think, is meeting the mom and find out what she's done since, in the 15, 20 years since they've been broken up, and dealing with everything in between there. And then, like I said, with all the cultists and everything, it was I think it was one of the better stories told in an Assassin's Creed game, where normally, it's always like, oh, Templar is like, he's running, he's the priest or he's basically the mayor or whatever. He runs the town or something. And he's got all this power, and we have to stop the Templars. And this one, there wasn't that story. It was this woman trying to find her family, figure out what the hell's going on, what the hell happened, and bring everybody back together, and also be a badass at the same time. And I've said this before, but I think the side missions for the most part, there's a lot of fetch quest ones in there, but there's some that a lot of them actually that I thought like they felt like they were like not like top of the line like story missions like you would see in mainline quest games, but they were still like these are like really well done. Like if these would be like the middle of the pack missions, and like you'd see in like a main story. So there, I think they all like meant something. There was cool moments where like you would find something in the world, and you'd go to like you talk to this person like, hey, I need help finding this, and like, oh, here it is. There you go. Like I don't know how many times it happened to me where like I found something before I talked to the person that needed it, or like the impact you can make on an island you go to where it's like this woman, she's a captain of a boat, and she's like, I lost my crew. Can you help me find a boat? You find the boat, and it's sunk, and sharks ate it. Sharks ate the crew, and now she joins your crew. Now she's a really important part of your cast of characters on this boat you run. So yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of issues with it, but overall, I think the highs really outrank the lows by a pretty wide margin. So that's the main reason why it's my number 5 game of the year. So Gables, what's your number 5?
Well, let's see. My number 5 game of the year is A Way Out.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
honestly loved playing through this game from start to finish. There was a lot of great moments. There was a lot of funny ass shit.
Yes.
Like, I mean, the whole scene and stuff, we're both in cells next to each other, trying to chisel our way out from the toilets or something like that. I get my stuff done, and all of a sudden, when it comes to your turn, the guards would not leave you alone for like a good solid
Yeah.
5 to 7 minutes, and I'm just laughing my ass off because I'm trying to trying to watch and stuff, and you had already got like caught like 3 or 4 times at this point. I'm like, oh god, just come away, come on, just get this going.
Bastards.
Then the whole aspects of you and I just going through like the situations like crawling up that space and stuff to try to get through the manholes and stuff, and then like the whole randomness of not only just playing through these random freaking games that's just out of nowhere, like going through sitting through like across from each other in that teeter totter was fucking hilarious.
Yes.
That was just comedy gold right here. Just two grown men sitting across from one another like on a freaking like like a freaking like seesaw aspect, and we're just staring at each other and it's like, what? Okay, let's see this option, let's see what happens here, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
that ends up becoming like one of the rarest trophies we can get in the game because hardly
Yep.
anyone's done that. That's one of the most awkward moments for both characters, like, what are we doing? It's like, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's like, okay, let's get off of this. And
Well,
what's
it's like
sad
this
is
never
you
happened.
can't even do it again after you
Yeah.
do it once. That's sad though, but the best parts about this game, I will agree with you from when you were talking about it earlier, was just the experience of going through not only just like the motions of it, going through the story, learning bits about both of the characters and stuff, but also the way they break out of the prison, the chances, a little bit of the choices you get to go through, and then that going through like all these this friendly competition stuff, like with the whole arm wrestling stuff, the whole Connect Four stuff, the whole basketball stuff, all of that just contributed itself with a majorly memorable experience that I'm not going to forget for a while, especially
Yeah.
that ending. I mean, hell, regardless of who chose what, no matter who chose what during that final ending, it would have ended on like a sour, like just on like a heartstring note or something like that. So it's like I feel that this type of story and stuff like that, it was definitely good. I mean, there were some aspects of this game which I didn't like, but yet it seemed like it hit its mark in every major moment of what it was trying to tell. It definitely did not like overstay its welcome at times, in my honest opinion, and it was definitely a worthwhile experience. And this is kind of funny. This is a game made by EA, a studio that's from like EA and stuff like that, where nothing was like just heavily microtransaction, nothing was heavily like toned down or really definitely like just mutilated or something like that in the span of trying to add like extra multiplayer stuff that didn't need to be there or this or that. It was just a fun game from beginning to end. And part of why it's in my top 5 is because the experiences that you and I had. Basically, we just sat down, we just did like 2 playthroughs, just 2 sittings. We got
Yeah.
through the whole entire game. We went through half of the game in our first sitting, and then the other half we finished all the rest like on a random Saturday. And it's like, okay, let's go through and finish this, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, that was something. And it's like you and I just decided this convenience, like, yeah, you know what, Tyler's like, what? It's like, let's never play through this again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, once was enough.
Oh
Unless you want to get
God.
on the teeter totter, I'd get with you on the teeter totter anytime.
Oh God. Just the thought of 2 grown men on a teeter totter is just so fucking hilarious. But yes, that's my number 5 game of 2018.
All right. Very cool. Moving on to Justin's number 4. Wow. Okay, cool. Shadow of the Colossus for Justin.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Wow. Cool. He just said spiritually moving, which I can agree with. So cool, Justin. But moving on to my number 4 game of 2018, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah. Is that a surprise like really high or surprise too low?
Actually, I'm surprised you got it that high.
Oh, okay.
Honestly.
Okay. Um, yeah, I felt really, from the beginning of doing this list, I felt really good about my top 5. That was kind of the really easiest part to put in place for myself. And I feel really good about this one. And I'm quite frankly surprised going into it, like I said, when on the first podcast we did of this 2018 stuff, I thought I was going to hate this game, and it turned out that I absolutely loved it. With it's a recreation of probably the second most important game of my life, outside of Metal Gear Solid 1 on PlayStation, and it was done extremely well. They did a
Yes.
great job with the quality of life. I thought, it was the purest thing to pure joy. The closest thing to pure joy for me in gaming this year was playing this game. Like, just like the first 15 hours of this game, I think I had a fucking biggest smile. I think an ear to ear smile on my face playing this game. Like, this is everything I wanted. Like I said, I bought 2 Pokeball Pluses. I drove all the way out to go get one. Dealing kind of fat, making it easier to get through. As far as like grinding goes, I thought with, they added some extra trainers, so it was like you don't have to like go and grind if you didn't want to catching Pokemon. I all of the story beats I thought were better. I think facing blue and green was awesome. The Elite Four was great. I just, man, everything about this game I think is just, they found a way to make everything better. I mean, my one big hubbub, and I've talked about it at length, is I don't like the motion controls. I don't like,
Oh yeah.
as much as
That's a
I thought,
given.
yeah, as much as I like I think the Pokeball Plus was better than the Joy Cons. It's still, I would much rather use my Pro controller. But just like I said, everything about this game was just magic. It was wonderful. It's definitely there's a lot to do with nostalgia, but I think also the ups and downs, the best and worst come from nostalgia, where it's like, you look at a game like, oh, I love that game, and you play it, it's a game from, it could be a game from last generation, it could be a game from 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and you look back at how much you love that game, and you play it, it's like, okay, no, this game isn't as good as I remember it being. But at the same time, when it is as good as you remember it being, but not only that, but it's now better because of the
Yes.
updates they made, that just makes it even better. I would love to make this much higher. But like I said, I still feel comfortable with my list. So yeah, Pokemon Let's Go, pure magic. My number 4 game of the year. Gables, what's your number 4?
Super Smash Brothers Ultimate.
Wow. Okay.
I know, it's kind of interesting to see the position where this game is on my list, but at the same point, I heavily enjoyed going through the process of unlocking the characters in this game, and each time that I have gone through the classic mode, every time that I've gone through the classic mode, everything is set up differently with each character. They have each of them have their own routes. The characters have been manipulated to a certain extent to where they feel unique, where everything feels kind of vastly different in terms of the gameplay and in terms of like the available, not just the adaptability and the accessibility, I should say, of how you control specific characters and stuff. It feels real, pretty much like a wild card sort of a game and stuff, where I'm just picking up Smash and just using different characters that I feel like I want to use and stuff. There's all this variety of different fighters I want to play as and stuff, and it definitely has left a good lasting impression. In terms of the World of Light stuff, I still am like just debating to and from whether I want to pursue more of it or not, though. But honestly, it was not the reason why I bought Smash to begin with. From what I bought Smash to begin with was basically a multiplayer focused game to where if I want to play through a couple of different Smash matches with somebody or for go through a bunch of like single player stuff by myself, I can do that. If I want to set up a tournament or if I want to set up like special like 3v3 or 5v5 matches and all this stuff, I can do that. It's the accessibility and the amount of content that I can do in this game that makes me so excited to go back and play it. Especially since I have gone through the classic mode now, I think roughly around, I want to say 10 to maybe 13 times with different characters. And I have not felt bored in the least. The adjustable difficulty factor is definitely a plus. I'm not sure if I'm going to go through and actually beat the actual arcade, no, the actual like classic mode thing on the highest difficulty possible. I mean, I can, but I'm not too sure if I want to, because I would need to memorize a character really like distinctly, and even after trying to get through the highest extent with some characters, which I think I've gotten like 8 points something rather with one of the characters I played as, I don't want to go through the whole basic experience to try to just say that I've done this or done that. But from what I've played, it's definitely one of the more fantastic fighting games that I've played in recent memory. But I'll tell you what, it's definitely the Smash Brothers game that I've been clamoring for in terms of the characters that I want to play as. And considering we got even more characters that are going to be announced pretty soon, including the inclusion of a Persona 5 character with Joker, just recently announced over the past couple weeks, it makes me more excited of the possibilities of who else am I going to be playing as. So with that in mind, the impression of what I've had in the amount of time that I've had to play with Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, I have thoroughly enjoyed. So it's definitely number 4 on my list on games of 2018.
Wow. Okay. I mean, honestly, I thought with you and Justin, I thought this would be Smash would be in the at least top 2. I thought Justin would be number 1, so I'm definitely surprised to see where it is.
Yeah.
But moving on to number 3, Justin's number 3. Wow. Okay. Didn't see that either. Number 3 is Celeste.
Wow.
And he put simply perfect. Okay. Once again, I thought would be much higher. Not much higher. I thought that'd be number 2 for him going into it. But moving on to my number 3, the most ripped off game of this list for both of you guys, you sons of bitches, Marvel's Spider-Man. So this is probably the only game on this list for me, looking at it, where I just jumped into it and was sucked into it and could not quit playing until I beat it. Remember the first day it came out, I actually had the day off, and the first day I think I put like 12 hours into it. Just loved it. And I mean, I'm talking like I put 12 hours into it and I barely touched the story. I got all the backpacks.
Yep.
I was taking all the doing all the crimes, taking all the gangs, all their bases,
It
doing
was that fun.
everything. Yeah. I just, like I said, I put over 30 hours into this game, and I never got tired of swinging around the city. The only time I ever fast traveled was to get the trophy to say I fast traveled. That was it. That was the only reason I did it. Because just flying around the city was just a blast. You just felt cool the entire time. Yeah, you're only pushing a couple buttons, but when you're swinging around and you get super high and you're like flying down at the last second right before you hit the ground, you hit the R2 button and go swing some more, and you just flossing through and like whipping through alleys, taking shortcuts. It feels great. I love it. Combat, yeah, it's great. It's fluid. It's definitely much like Arkham. I still feel like like Justin said, he thinks Arkham is better. I do not. I think that I know it's not fair because he can't rebuttal to me, but I think the biggest thing, yeah, like I said, the combat, it's definitely an Arkham ripoff for that. But I think what makes this game better is that, and the thing that makes me love this game as much as I do is the fact that it's just as much of a Peter Parker story as it is a Spider-Man story. I love that, there's a lot of cutscenes dealing with his relationship with Mary Jane, and they're in the tough spot where they broke up, and now they're kind of like friends, sort of, possibly getting back together. You meet Miles, who he's trying to mentor. He's also helping his Aunt May out, trying to work a work a full time job with Doc Ock, and that whole story progressing with with like the company can go under at any point in time, and just him like he's kicks out of his apartment because he can't afford rent, and he's fucking Spider Man, and he's done all these great things for the city, but he's homeless, and uh, all of that is great. And on top of that, I mean, I think that's a really interesting story in itself. But then you throw on top of that, you're Spider Man, and dealing with he has all this shit going on with Mister Negative. You meet the Sinister Six. Everything about it is great. You know, like I said, I think, like I said, in a couple weeks ago on one of our shows, where I thought 2018 was a very flawed year. Like, there's a lot of really good games, great games, but a lot of them, pretty much most of them, had flaws. This is one of the first ones I think this year I played, and my next two after this, I had pretty much no flaws with. Um, this one, the only real flaw I have is the DLC, and I don't know if that's even fair to say that because it's a DLC. It's extra content. It's not, if I didn't play it, it doesn't really. I don't want to say it's like it went from a 9.9 to a 8.2 because of DLC, but it does hurt it. Where it's kind of disappointing. I haven't finished episode 3 yet. I've only played the first 2 episodes. Um, but yeah, I loved all of this game. Just like I loved pretty much every game in my top 10 list. Um, so yeah, it's probably, it's not my game of the year, but it's probably the most fun game of the year for me.
Nice.
And especially, I think the city being so bright, it's so, it's definitely, like, it's easy to make the comparison to Arkham, and you look at Arkham when it's so dark and kind of, it's grisly and all that, and that's the point. That's what Batman, and that's what it is. And you play Spider-Man, it's so bright and colorful, and there's so much joy. And then Spider-Man being such a, do his all his like sarcastic, smart ass comments here and there. Yeah, it was all great. So Spider-Man is my number 3 game of 2018. Gables, what's yours?
My number 3 game of this year is A Hat in Time.
Wow. Okay.
Now, to give you a good perspective, A Hat in Time is a platformer, a 3D platformer. This is a game that's actually a lot better than certain attempts this past year in terms of like trying to make games of that same type. But the thing about it, it's fairly charming. There's a lot of excellent like level design, a lot of excellent character designs, and like a lot of extra like quirky personality stuff with this game. You basically play the role as this young girl and stuff that has to collect these various hats and stuff to collect these certain like these notebook pieces. I want to say, gosh, it's been a while since I've actually powered on the game, but I played through this game so much, and I enjoyed every bit of like the worlds, the characters. Like, say the first world, you gotta face off against these mafia guys and stuff, and try to get all these like these various powers and stuff to try to advance further. Because no, actually, they were hourglasses. I remember now. They're freaking hourglasses because in the story, your spaceship actually crashes or something like that into some of these like these random people when you're crossing across, like going across Earth or something like that, and you lose all these little hourglasses that are supposed to represent your time, like machine stuff, and you got to go down there in order to fish a lot of them up. But the way you can go through, like with each character and this and that, is just really funny. Like you encounter this girl, this young girl or something that has a mustache and stuff, and you have to try to deal with her. She becomes your rival and this and that, and oh man, it's just the amount of joy that I've had. You remember, like in say Mario Odyssey, where you had like these specific levels and stuff, or even like in Super Mario like Sunshine, where you have these specific levels where you have to go through this like various terrain in order this like obstacle course in order to get like that end goal, that shine sprite or this or that.
Yeah.
You have the same things inside Hat in Time, only these are like just basic sort of platforming style, like 3D platforming style, like courses where your end result has to get these like elaborately advanced like hourglasses, and they're so fulfilling and so awesome when you go through and you complete the stuff. Oh, let's see. This is one of the few games this past year where I got it, I downloaded it, and man, I felt so relieved once I got that platinum trophy for it because I 100% completed this game. It was that much of a good game that I looked at what I needed to do. And once I went through and I completed the rest of the stuff, it's like, man, now I'm satisfied playing this game. And now I'm hearing that the game's going to be coming on the Switch sometime soon, so it's definitely going to be a good game that Switch owners in the future are going to want to dive into, because if you're missing a great 3D platformer in the veins like of a Banjo-Kazooie or a Super Mario 64 where it's kind of like a collectathon, A Hat in Time is definitely worth it. Most definitely worth it. And that's why it's my number 3 game of the year.
Very cool. Moving on to Justin's number 2, though. God of War. Amazing, but I'd rather it would have been Lord of the Rings. Don't know how I feel about that comment, but moving on to my number 2 game of the year, and this was a tough one. Like I said, I felt really comfortable with my top 5, but this was a hard call to make. Obviously, it's 2 and 1. It's always is. But my number 2 game of 2018 is Celeste. Wow. We talked about it a lot last week where, we talk about, we always get these really, it seems like every year we get a couple like great indie games that kind of stand out above. Like we get a lot of good indie games, it seems like every year nowadays.
Yes.
But there's always one or two that kind of stand above the rest. But they don't usually sometimes always match up with the AAA stuff. And this one, Celeste, is different, I think. We talked about last week where I felt that this isn't just a really cool game that we're gonna look at like Braid or Inside or Limbo or Castle Crashers back in the day. This game, I think we can look back honestly and look at it when we look back at Game of the Generation for PS4, Xbox One. We're gonna look at Celeste, and that's game. I mean, that might not be everybody's number 1, but I think it's gonna be in consideration for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's huge for any game, AAA or not, but to be a game that was made by a handful of people, with the music that's in it, the art style, the story, everything about this game is perfect. It's perfect. Like I said, this is, like I said a couple weeks ago, this is not a Tyler game. It is not. And I think that's a big reason why it's number 2 as well, is the fact that this is not a Tyler's game at all. But I loved it, and I beat this game in a few sittings, and I could not quit playing this game. When normally, Tyler would have gave up on chapter 3 in the hotel when I broke down, but because they had all the options in there, and I love the way they did it, where it's like, hey, this game is meant to be a challenge, but we understand that sometimes things need a little help sometimes, and so I did the double dash, and not Mario Kart double dash, but a double, you can dash twice, and that totally changed the game for me, and I've used that the rest of the way through, and I love that because if it wasn't for that, just like the XP boost in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I wouldn't have finished this game. I would have quit it in chapter 3. This game might have been talked about sometime somewhere else after that on like most surprising game, most disappointing game, whatever. But the fact that they have that option, give you that option, the way they go about explaining that why this game is so difficult, and explaining why they understand why they hey, we gave you this because of you, this reason why. And then the story of Madeline, where the whole journey is, she's in a rut. She's challenging herself. She's got all these anxiety problems. She's got these mental health issues. We all experience anxiety issues. We all deal with issues, some way worse than others.
Mm-hmm.
and just the whole story and her meeting her friend and the bad Madeline coming out. And literally at one point, like you're running away from her, like you're running away from yourself. Like the way everything is explained and it's done is just perfect. Um, and the and on you have this great story, you have this great art style, you have this fucking fantastic music that I haven't quit listening to since it popped up on my Spotify list last week working on this stuff. I cannot quit listening to Resurrection, which is the one of the main songs from it. And it just so happens actually on my I have a Alexa Echo Dot that's my alarm in the morning. The music that wakes me up every morning when I get up for work this past week, it is Celeste music. So it's definitely made my days. It makes it getting up out of when I wake up. It's a lot more wonderful than a annoying beeping noise. But also it sets you up because I know every day is gonna be a challenge. So just like every time I played Celeste was a challenge. Like I said, best moment getting to the top of that mountain. Oh my God, when you're climbing that last chapter is something else, man.
Oh yeah.
And every time you get to every slide, every room is difficult. But you get to that last section, you're right fucking there. You can see it. You're there. You keep getting those flags telling you you're just a little bit closer. Every time you get there, you're like, I don't know how I did that. I don't think I could ever do it again, but I did it. And you, like I said, you get that little thing in your brain that's like, yes. You get the little chemical up there that's making you feel really good, and you're just getting that every single step, every time. And I think Matt from Matt Makes Games, who made Celeste, he said it really well at the Game Awards, and I'm probably butchering this, but he said, for people that have beaten their anxiety, or this game has helped them beat anxiety, you did that, not this game. You take credit for what you did, and I think a lot of that, he's like, and you look at that every time I beat a slide, that's how I felt. It's like I'm beating this game, but it's that I'm beating this game. The game, like the game's not beating me. It's just it's great. It's fantastic. And looking at our list, you know, yeah, I don't know. I'll get into it later. I don't want to jump into more of that, but yeah, it's a wonderful game. Probably the most satisfying game I've ever finished in my entire life. I think this game right now I would say this is going to be in my top 10 list for game of the generation. So yeah, and probably one of the greatest games I've ever played in my entire life. So that is my number 2, Celeste. Gables, what's your number 2?
Dragon Ball Fighters.
Okay, wow. Okay.
Okay, so with Dragon Ball Fighters, from the get-go, from when I played this game this year, and then going through the initial story mode, going through the initial parts of the character trials, this and that, this has been the Dragon Ball game I've been looking for ever since playing through Budokai 3 on the PS2. Man, all that long ago, it's like I've been waiting for like a decent game where I feel like I'm actually going through and playing through a fantastic game on top of like liking a lot of the Dragon Ball licensed stuff. But what really kind of got me over to this full extent is just how accessible the game is. The game mechanics are solid. The music and all the other different types of characters you can select is fantastic. Going through the whole character pass stuff, this is one of the only games I can remember where I paid full price for this game at launch and then paid for the character pass, like additional $35 and stuff to get all the decent characters from like Android 17, Cooler, Bardock, Broly, just all these random characters that I grew up at least watching certain bits and stuff. And then this led me going through playing through this game again once I initially finished up watching all of Dragon Ball Super in the span of like a couple of weeks, where I blazed through like 100 episodes of that damn series on Crunchyroll. And I'm like, oh my god, I'm in the mood to play Dragon Ball Fighters again. And it's like, ever since, I've been streaming this game off and on, and I'm really hoping the competitive scene for this game actually keeps on going, because there have been some like noise that maybe suggests otherwise as of late, but I seriously want to see this game keep on going. I want to see new characters. I want to play this game for a while, because it is that fighting game that has actually gotten me out of, going through, getting me out of stuff and right back into the thick of how I used to play fighting games and how I wanted to play fighting games. And that's just the thing about it. This game is so user friendly that it makes you feel like a badass every time you execute certain combos or you execute certain like switches, or when you call in a character for an assist or switch them in on the fly and stuff. It's seamless a lot of the times. I mean, there were some issues with the online at launch, but going through and playing through some bits of the online stuff now, I mean, yeah, there's certain issues here and there though, but it's not like bad. It's not horrible like say like a Fallout 76 would be for like online this and that. But I love discovering new combos and stuff for characters. Facing off against people online has been both rewarding and equally as part as like hair pulling because of like how difficult a lot of these guys are memorizing these specific combos. You go into like a casual match or something like that and people are just pulling off these elaborate fucking combos that you didn't even think about using. And I'll tell you what, one of the best joys of this past year has been watching high competitive level play for Dragon Ball Fighters. I mean, you watch guys like Echo and Sonic Fox and stuff go at it or something like that for Evo this past year, and it's like, holy crap, just the amount of depth they've had to have thought of in order to try to execute not only these various moves, but also just to go into specific setups in order to like just execute these bases of combos are just phenomenal, and everything looks so crisp and so awesome. It's the type of game, because of the 2D sprites and everything else, it's going to be a beautiful game like for years to come. And that's what's so amazing about it, because it's one of the reasons why games on Marvel vs. Capcom 2 stayed around the competitive fighting scene for a while, is because the look of the game is awesome, the play of the game is even more fantastic, and what's more hilarious is the Dragon Ball Fighters end up becoming more popular than Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite in terms of the competitive fighting scene and stuff. And it's kind of funny how like Dragon Ball Fighters actually beat Marvel vs. Capcom inside of its own game for 3v3 fighters. Because I never thought that was going to happen during the span of this year. And also, it was very surprising that I would be considering a Dragon Ball game anywhere close to my top 10, considering I saw it initially coming into this year. It's like, oh, okay, this looks pretty fun, this and that, and this and that. Then all of a sudden I see all these rave reviews about it. I'm like, uh-oh, maybe I should actually pay attention to this game. Then I buy it during launch, start playing as some of my favorite characters in the show, and this and that, and all of a sudden repicking it back up like months later, and then try to stream it like consistently like I had been doing, and coming across these various combos, and I'm just figuring out how to vanish against people at just the right moments and bouncing them off the walls and juggling them to all these different combos. I'm like, oh my god, this game is amazing. So that's my number 2 game of the year, Dragon Ball Fighters.
All right, well, very cool. Moving on to Justin's number 1. It is... Pitter Pot.
What?
No, I'm kidding.
God damn it.
It is Red Dead Redemption 2.
No surprise.
So he put a little short thing here. Breath of the Wild of the American West. Best looking invokes Stanley Kubrick films. Unmatched music and atmosphere. Scope unseen this year. A.K.A. Motherfucker. Unravel 2. God damn. Why did I even read that? I could have just not read that. Like, it's stupid. I have the power here to read these, and I keep doing it. I hate that guy. God. No. So Justin doesn't get a number 1 this year. I'm revoking his top 10 list. I'm gonna put a big X here as I'm writing him down. So moving on to my game of the year 2018. Gables, you want to take a guess what it is?
I already know what it is, so I'm going to go ahead and let you say it anyway.
Okay. It is God of War. Man. I raved about Celeste being one of the best games, one of my favorite games of all time. This very well could be my very favorite game of all time. I think that there's sometimes that does get overthrown. Like, oh, this is one of my favorite games of all time. And I probably do. You say it too much. I think a lot of people do say that too much about things in media in general. And I don't feel like I'm being too bombastic when I say that. Where this, when we did our top 30 list, I had, I think Metal Gear Solid 4. Metal Gear Solid 4 was my number one game, and this very well could trump that. And I look at this like, I talk, like I said, I think 2018 had a lot of flaws this year in gaming. My 3, 2, and 1, I don't think really had any major flaws. This game had no flaws. Um, for me, as someone who did not like the God of War games at all, and I gave them many opportunities to get into them, and I just couldn't. Uh, and turn around and have this be not only my game of the year, like I said, one of my favorite games of all time. That's, I think, to me personally, that's huge. I think, you know this is a perfect game. I don't like I don't really I can't think of a bad thing that happened. Maybe a spot I got stuck on a few times because it got really hard. But that's not really, I don't know, that's not really a flaw. That's just the part I got stuck on. That was me getting better at a game. I look at this. I think the world that they built with the Valhalla mythology, or not Valhalla, but the world of Valhalla and everything that they did, um, it was great. I love the lore. I love just walking around the world or traveling on a boat, and Atreus, or the little talking head guy that you get, is just telling you a story about some of the characters in this world and what's going on, like with the snake, or why he's stuck in a tree, or any of the Balder, or any of the characters you deal with, and learning more of their backstory. And I loved it. I would just sit there, like I would get up to the next look, like they're telling you the story as you're paddling to your next location. I would get to my location, and I would just sit there in the boat and wait for them to finish the story. It could be 2-3 minutes. I didn't care. I didn't want them to stop talking. I wanted to keep going. Um, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. I don't like the combat is great. I think like I was saying earlier about, sometimes you get that meathead character that just that you get, it's kind of wear, you don't, it doesn't wear on you, but he just doesn't really stick out. It doesn't really mean anything to you anymore. And Kratos was that guy. He was like the poster boy of that. Him and Marcus Phoenix from Gears of War. Those are like the two guys when you think of muscle bound meatheads in gaming. Those are the guys. And they turned around and they made this guy a really interesting character, who has a son whose wife is has died, and they're just trying to take her ashes to the top of this mountain, and the journey along the way of trying to not tell Atreus the full story about himself, and his son dealing with the death of his mother, and this weird relationship that they have with each other. All of it's great. The boss battles are fantastic. Second only to probably Shadow of the Colossus this year. The combat, the axe. My God, I don't know if there's ever been a better weapon ever invented in a game before. I can't imagine going back and trying to play God of War with just the Chains of Olympus, and just playing the game without this axe now. Like, really just going back to play this game with the hack and slash elements of it. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm going around about ways because I don't have like a flaw. Like all these 10 through 2, I was able to point out something either a major or a minor dislike I had about it, or a major or minor flaw, whatever it is. And I got nothing for this. I sat there and I thought about it. I'm like, I'm saying something negative on my top 10 list about every game I played, and I got nothing, zero, zilch. Uh, you know, yeah. I mean, I can rave about this game for another 20 minutes if I wanted to, but I won't for the sake of our lips doesn't count. But yeah, my number one game by an absolute landslide this year. I think this is Celeste was a really great game, and it sucks putting it number two. But to me, this was the easiest year ever to make my number one, and that's God of War. So Gables, what's your number one?
My number one game of 2018 happens to be Celeste.
Yes. Okay.
Now, the thing about Celeste is I didn't know going into this month what exactly my game of the year was going to be. going through and checking through my backlog and stuff, there were plenty of games I could have went through and took the opportunity to go through and maybe finish up or go through an experience just in time for this show. But at the same point, I wanted to go back. I watched many top tens. I watched through many impressions of like different people, what they thought were the best games, what they thought were the worst games of 2018, and one game kept popping up that kept popping up consistently, and that was Celeste.
Pitter pot. Oh.
No, no, of course not. The thing about it, it prompted me to go right back what I was doing, and I went back to that area. I restarted the entirety of like chapter 3, mind you, going through the whole motel and going through all this. What started off as a game that was pretty much like a girl climbing up a mountain became so much of an internal like kind of conflict between like man versus self, quintessentially, where the whole story and the whole gameplay of it in of itself is like you trying to overcome your fears, your anxieties in order to reach your end goal, which in this case happened to be climbing the top of this mountain. But along the way you meet a lot of friends, you meet different types of like just different types of obstacles that are in your way. You come forth, you confront yourself, you go through, and it's like, the thing about it, it's like, it's basically almost kind of like an internal struggle how people go through, like, say, with certain parts of mental illness, not only just, like, with heavy anxieties, but depression stuff, where it's like, you have your days where it's like, everything's all feeling nice, all things feeling neat, and all of a sudden you have the days and stuff where you just feel absolutely sorry for yourself, or you just feel like you're gonna go through, like, an actual combat between yourself and like your inner self and this and that. It's like a lot of that stuff, it's like anybody can really relate to. And what it comes across is like sort of like what it looks like on the surface is like a simplistic platformer ends up becoming a more philosophical game that really doesn't have too much of fault to it. The game is very accessible. The game is lovely in terms of its whole level design. I didn't really have any type of issues when it came to going through and playing the game in and of itself, because even though there were parts where things started to get heavily difficult, I was more pressed to keep continuing on because I knew that I could progress through it based upon my skill. Not one moment did I feel like the game was unfair to me. I thought it was more or less structured because of my own lack of skill going through specific parts, which it was. And the thing about it was, every time that I would accomplish, like, say, a different part of a level, or if I would get through something that would be taking me, like, about 5 or 10 minutes to get past, I would feel equally the amount as accomplished, and still, even after all of that, going through and finishing Celeste last week, actually finishing through that game, like, a day after we got done our recording for, like, oh boy, couple of podcasts ago now.
Yeah.
Going through all of that and then finishing up Celeste and enjoying the better parts of that ending and stuff, and then just going through the last portions of it where it's like you're battling yourself, you finally make peace, you do this and do that, and that whole ending portions where you're climbing up the scale in the last parts of that mountain and just like going through all these setbacks and going through all this thing, it was definitely an experience I am not going to forget anytime soon inside of a game. Because, for one, you play games in order to try to get away from certain feelings like that sometimes. You go forth to just lose yourself in terms of like losing yourself in terms of distracting your mind of what you can do or what like feels awesome or what actually goes through. And there are some games that help you relate quite nicely to a character and stuff. And in that regards, I feel what Celeste does is kind of transcends itself, not only for like a fantastic game, but also it's sort of like a generational type of game that happens every so often, to where so many people find so many different things to relate to inside of what this game is trying to portray, and how certain feelings that are going to contribute to what you initially do, that it leaves you with the thought of, it's like, yeah, there are different things in life that are going to present itself to you where things are going to be negative, things are going to be bad in and of itself, bad things will happen, but what you can do after the bad things happen to try to uplift and try to make you move on past these difficult times is what's going to shape you into what's going to eventually be quintessentially what potentially could be even better than what you initially were at the start of things. So at the start of Celeste, it's like you basically had these different type of anxiety issues and this and that, and you're just going through the mountain because you think, oh, it's just a mountain I'm gonna go through, and I'm gonna see if I can get things like all nice and scale it and stuff, whimsical. All of a sudden, it just becomes an eternal struggle, and then after the end of it, you feel a lot stronger because you had accomplished all this and conquered your fears, conquered your anxieties, and all of a sudden, you're left with this result to where you feel like an entirely different person because you have conquered all of that self-doubt, all of the pent-up stuff that's been presented to you right from the get-go. And now it's like this game presents itself kind of like a video game version of kind of like facing your inner self and then just going through and just making amends and then just moving on. That's what it just basically feels like through Celeste's interaction with like her friends and stuff like that, from the whole stages she has to go through in order to try to convince herself that she can climb the mountain and do this and that. And partially, that's why this game is my number one game of the year, because there are very few games that want to actually go through and relate to the player in that sort of a philosophical level, but at the same time, everything else about this game adds on to this kind of like, oh man, kind of like this like endless ride that kind of feels like, with the music, with how fantastic the musical score is, the level design, how good that is, with the thoughts of the player in mind in terms of what you can do accessibility wise, and it just collaborates itself to a fantastic experience. I can understand why people like Celeste, this game, and I understand why people have it at the top of their lists for game of the years. And quite honestly, it's part of the reason why it's my number one game for 2018. Because not only is it a tackle-heavy subject matter, but also it just goes through and just is a fantastic game from beginning to end.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my game for 2018.
Very cool, Gables, and very well said. Yeah, looking at our list, I was getting to this last time because I when we got towards the list, I kind of realized that Dragon Ball and Celeste were going to be your 1 and 2s. I just didn't know which order they'd be in.
I kind of knew by the top 3 that you were going to go with, because I knew it was going to be Celeste, God of War, and Spider-Man, and I actually figured it out where it's like Spider-Man's 2, Celeste, no, Spider-Man's 3, Celeste is 2, and God of War is 1. For Justin, he completely just been a mindfuck for everything, so it's like...
yeah, Pitter Pot number 1, what a douchebag. But yeah, no, I've been looking at our list right now, like the way our point system works. Celeste is probably our game of the year for Drunk Astronauts podcast for 2018.
Probably.
And I mean, it's your 1, it's my 2, it's Justin's 3. So
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever had matching game of the years before, but but I definitely don't think we've ever had 1, 2, and 3 before for a game.
No, we haven't.
So that's cool. But yeah, guys, that's gonna wrap up the podcast for us. For you guys, this episode, if you're listening to it as it came out, it's mid-January. For us, it's still 2018. So I want to thank everybody for listening to us this year, and really appreciate it. It's been mostly a 2-man show this year. We've kind of changed the formats a little bit, but I think overall it's a better show with the format not necessarily being a 2-man show. We still miss Justin every week. He's not here.
Oh yeah.
But I think we've done a really good job of just with being the two of us working out. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to us this year. Hope you stick around for 2019. Hope if you're listening to this in the future, hope you guys enjoyed. And I hope in 2032, if this podcast is still on the internet, if the internet's still a thing, people still think about Celeste the same way we do now. So until next time, guys, thank you guys for listening. I'm not gonna do the whole regular roll. You've heard it. I've said it enough this time tonight. So yeah, one for the last time for us in 2018. Gables, too sweet.
Too sweet, man.
Bye, guys.
See ya.